Surrealism is defined by Tate.org as a 20th century literary, philosophical, and artistic movement that explored the workings of the mind, championing the irrational, the poetic, and the revolutionary. Today we'll be looking at the movement of surrealism itself, the different aspects to surrealism, and how it can be applied, and how surrealism applies to justice around the world today. For example, how we see laws in other countries as surreal, and how they see ours. The term surrealist was coined by French poet Guillaume Apollinaire, and surrealism itself has a heavy emphasis on putting images together that shouldn't work, and forcing them to have a working relationship. This means that there is a heavy emphasis on collage, assemblage, and montage. Now, collage is usually 2D, which means it's paintings or print. Assemblage is usually 3D, which means it's sculptures or statues. And montage is usually about performance art. The book Performance Studies, The Interpretation of Aesthetic Texts, states that one of the more memorable performances of the Surrealist era was what was basically an associative free-for-all. This means that they put a whole bunch of performers on a stage, made them do a whole bunch of different things, and left it completely up to the audience what they wanted to pay attention to and how they wanted to interpret this. This is important because one of the most important aspects of surrealism is that it's not really about the performance itself. Surrealism is about how the audience interprets the performance and what they think about it. This is because surrealism is supposed to unlock a part of the subconscious in the audience.
What I am going to be talking about today is the definition of justism and the application of what that looks like and what forms of justice are found in different cultures or the abstract ideals behind this, very wide understanding of what justice is supposed to be. So justice is described as a behavior or treatment of people that provide peace and comfort in modern society, which is what we define as justice, and try to have the best application of that in not just our culture and not just our country, but in countries and cultures around us. There are multiple types of abstract ideals of justice, whether it be equality versus equity, or the idea of a need-based justice or merit-based justice. In an article written in the 1990s, a really famous current psychology article, it talks about the contemporary ideas of justice and the need for it and what's the principles and foundations it's based upon, but can have such a surreal tie to reality, because there is such a varying difference between so many different places. Even in today's modern society, with coronavirus and the elections and masks and protests, all of these things are shaping and rewiring the way that our society today works. And so even those things can be determined as surreal, like in Chicago, where they have really bad protests for Black Lives Matter, but then also people who are rioting against Black Lives Matter. There's so much conflict in today's society that justice seemed to have an uprooted surreal reality, especially with anti-police movements and the push and pull for reforming the police system.
In this section of the video, I will talk about how negative rights, positive rights, and justice as fairness, and how that relates to surrealism in our country. A negative right is the right not to be subjected to an action of another person or group, while a positive right is the right to be subjected to an action of another person or group. So a positive right is the freedom to be supported and sponsored by others, while a negative right is to exercise your basic rights as a citizen to be free, to have property, and to have the pursuit of happiness. That is a negative right. And Justice as Fairness by John Rawls describes a society of free citizens holding equal basic rights and cooperating within a egalitarian economic system. And egalitarian means Everybody wants the same, everybody wants to be equal, and that's what America preaches, and that's what America wants in this country. But that isn't always the case. There are cases like Trayvon Martin and Emmett Till, who are both black Americans living in America, but had their lives taken away because of how they exercised their rights. In the Trayvon Martin case, he was only walking to the store, exercising his positive right to buy something from the store, and exercising his negative right just to walk down the street. You know, a civil right just to walk down the street, but the neighborhood watchman thought otherwise and shot Trayvon on the spot because he thought he was going to do something else. In the Emmett Till case, he was flirting with a white woman, and two white men beat him, shot him in the head, and threw him in a river because they thought it wasn't right for him to do that. And all these things happened in America. And America preaches to be the land of the free and giving so many rights to these people, but we still do these things to this day, taking lives away because of how they exercise their rights.
So mine is welfare maximization. The meaning is there's no good found in vindictively causing pain to wrongdoers, but some form of punishment is in order. So I found the perfect articles that would go towards this and go correct. So this man named Stephen Selvin spent 2 years in solitary confinement because they forgot that he was down there, which is stupid. Like, how do you forget an inmate is solitary confinement? They found out, they remembered that he was down there. He had spent 2 years down there. They was denying him access to all kinds of things. One thing that came up was the dentist, because he had to pull his own tooth out because they denied him to be able to go get it taken out. Which, that's so stupid. At the end of the day, the man was paid $1.5 million for being stuck down there. And you want to know the reason they put him down there, which was said, was because he was depressed and he had suicidal thoughts. So they put him down there thinking that's going to change something and that's going to, make it better. Which his mental was deteriorating because you put him in a closed space by himself and you forgot him no food, no shower, you denied him access to anything. And another one I've seen was in the UK, where as the death penalty, they would hang people. Like, even back in 1964 till now, they hang people. And now it's not as much as 1964. They reduced it to 3 to 4 people per year, which is crazy because in the United States, our death penalty is the electric chair execution or whatever, lethal injection, or gas chamber. That's the ones that I know about that are in the United States. I think it's one more, but in the United States that we use. But hanging people, that was something different, and that's just for murder. Murder is different from the UK. And the two individuals in the UK that passed, they had to hang, was Peter Allen and Gwen Evans.
So, justice as it applies to surrealism is incredibly subjective, depending on the laws of the land or how you were raised or what you grew up with. To give an example, I'm going to be discussing retributive justice versus restorative justice, and those are two sides of the same coin. To give an example for it, retributive justice is an eye for an eye, essentially. So the punishment will fit the nature of the crime. So if you had tortured someone to death, then you yourself as a punishment will be tortured in that same manner to death. But here in America, we practice restorative justice, more or less, where in a perfect justice system, the amount of time you spend in prison fits the crime that you had committed while you were free. And to give an example of retributive justice, I'm going to pull an article from 2018 in Saudi Arabia. So there was a man, the suspect in this case was a man from Myanmar who was accused of breaking into a home of a Burmese woman and repeatedly stabbing her until she died, according to Bloomberg. He was also charged with weapons theft, the attempted murder of another man, and the attempted rape of another woman. King Solomon endorsed the execution. The crucifixion practice is a gruesome one and is employed sparingly, but most capital crimes in Saudi Arabia are punished through beheadings alone. That is not something that you find here in America, and that was something that I found was a really surreal form of retributive punishment. The fact that they still practice something as barbaric as a beheading or a crucifixion. You don't find that here in America. Just like if they were to come here, they would find it incredibly surreal that we have death row. You know, we don't just we wait, we go through the evidence over and over and over again. People are on death row for 5, 10, 15 years waiting to find out when it is that they're going to die. In Saudi Arabia, once you have been found guilty, that's it. There is no really a waiting period. You're done. So, in conclusion, as I said before, justice as it applies to surrealism is incredibly subjective, depending on where you live, how you were raised to think, and the laws of the land that you have lived on for your entire life.